In 1972, a scientist descended alone into a cave in Texas. No clock, no sunlight, no way to measure time. He planned to stay 2 months. When researchers finally signaled it was over, he thought only 25 days had passed. It had been 205, and the psychological records he kept from inside are almost too disturbing to read. His name was Michel Siffre, French geologist, 33 years old, and by 1972, he'd already done this once before, spent 2 months alone underground in a glacier in the French Alps. That experiment had shaken him, but he went back anyway. That's the first thing that should disturb you. He knew what it did to a person, and he still climbed back down. The cave was called Midnight Cave, just outside Del Rio, Texas, 65 meters underground. His only connection to the surface was a telephone line, one way. He could call up. They wouldn't call down unless it was an emergency. He brought books, a stationary bicycle, recording equipment, a calendar he refused to look at. His entire goal was to live inside his own biological rhythm. No external time cues, no artificial schedule, just the raw, unfiltered tick of a human nervous system left completely alone. Scientists call this a free-running environment. What Siffre would discover inside it, nobody was fully prepared for. The first weeks seemed manageable. He slept when he was tired, ate when he was hungry. He was organized, methodical. He kept detailed logs. His internal clock, he assumed, would hold. It didn't. Within the first month, something invisible had already begun to shift. His sleep cycles, which should have run roughly 24 hours, started drifting. Sometimes he'd be awake for 36 hours straight without realizing it. Then he'd sleep for what felt like 8 hours. It would be 15. He had no idea. And here's what makes that terrifying. He felt completely normal. There was no alarm going off in his brain, no warning. He was experiencing time at a completely different rate than reality, and his mind was simply accepting it. But that wasn't the worst part. Around day 30, something else began to happen. Something he hadn't anticipated and couldn't explain. He started losing the ability to think, not all at once, but slowly, like a fog rolling in. Tasks that should have been simple took enormous effort. He'd pick up a book and read the same paragraph over and over without retaining anything. He'd start a thought and forget where it was going before he reached the end of the sentence. He noted in his logs, "My mind feels like it's moving through water." And then the hallucinations started. Not dramatic visions or anything cinematic, just presences, sounds that weren't there, the sense that something was in the cave with him. He'd turn around, nothing. He'd hear his name, silence. He described it as the cave speaking to him in a language just below understanding. He was alone, 65 meters underground, in total darkness when he turned out his light. And his brain, starved of stimulation, had started manufacturing its own reality. This is where it gets philosophically strange, because Siffre didn't lose his mind in a dramatic Hollywood sense. He didn't descend into chaos. What happened was quieter and somehow worse. He simply adapted. He accepted the hallucinations as part of the environment. He began to treat the voices and the presences as company. He stopped being afraid of them. Think about that for a moment. The human mind, sufficiently isolated, will accept anything as normal. It will rewrite reality just to avoid being alone. But Siffre pushed further. By the 6th week, time had become completely abstract. He described calling the surface to log what he believed was day 30-something. The researchers above, tracking actual time, knew it was day 79. He was off by nearly 50 days, and he had no idea. When they told him the real date, he didn't believe them. He argued. He had kept meticulous records, he was certain, and yet the numbers didn't lie. His subjective time had compressed at almost exactly half speed. 2 days of real time felt like one to him. And here's the part almost nobody talks about. It wasn't uniform. The compression got worse as the experiment went on. In the early weeks, he was off by days. By the end, he was off by weeks. As if time wasn't just moving differently, it was accelerating its distortion. The deeper into isolation he went, the more untethered from reality his internal clock became. When he finally emerged from the cave on September 5, 1972, thinking it was somewhere around mid-August, the first thing researchers noticed wasn't confusion. It was his face. He had aged, not in years, but in some indefinable quality that people around him couldn't quite name. His eyes were different, the way he moved, the way he paused before answering questions, as if checking something internally before letting it out. He described it in one line, "I felt like I had lived another life down there, one I couldn't fully remember." Now here's where the story stops being just about a cave. Siffre's experiment has been studied for decades, mostly for its implications on space travel, on shift workers, on sleep science. But there's a dimension to it that science doesn't fully measure. When you remove every external anchor, every clock, every sunrise, every social cue, what's left is just you. And what Siffre discovered is that you is far less stable than you think. He himself said the experiment broke something in him that never fully healed. He fell into a deep depression after returning to the surface. He described the world as too fast, too loud, too much. Social situations exhausted him. He couldn't concentrate the way he used to. He didn't do another experiment like it. The cave didn't create something foreign in him. It revealed something that was already there. The anxiety, the way the mind fills silence with shadow. All of it, the whole architecture, sits on a foundation we never think to question until the light goes out. Michel Siffre spent 205 days in a cave. He came out believing he'd been there for 25. Maybe the most unsettling thing isn't what happened to him down there. It's how little it would take for it to happen to you. All you need is the dark and enough time.